Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests. So my name is Marion, and the title of my speech today is When I First Learned What Thankfulness Really Was About. You know, when you think about it, back in the day, I didn't know anything about thankfulness or gratitude. I just knew you said thank you when people did something nice for you, or thank you when they gave you something, right? That's all I knew. So I had the wonderful opportunity to live on an island for 2 years. This island was 8 miles by 15 miles. So it wasn't exactly large, that's for darn sure. And there were no sandy beaches, so we ended up, there were cliffs that were all over the place. When I got there with my daughter, we met up with my husband at the time, who was in the Air Force. We were stationed at Lodges Air Force Base on this island called Terra Serra, which is one island out of 9 of a set of islands called the Azores. Is anyone familiar with Azores? Ah, very good. It's actually located, for those of you who don't know, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It is exactly 8,842 miles from here. It is 900 miles from Lisbon, Portugal. It is part of Portugal. We got there and we had a nice long flight and it was beautiful. Everything that we saw was beautiful. My daughter was only 4, but she loved what she saw also. When we got there, we moved into our military housing area, and several weeks later, I had this group of women come over and they sat down and met with me, introducing me to all the wonderful things of Lodges Air Force Base. And they said, "Do you have your maid yet?" And I said, "My maid? No, I don't have a maid." And they said, "Well, you have to have a maid." I said, "Oh, no. I don't need a maid." And they said, "No, you don't understand the culture. You need to have a maid. The other thing you need to understand is that these women here on the island, this is how they make their money to contribute to their families, is by being maids to the American families." Well, what do you say after that? Of course, you say, "Okay, I guess I'm in." So we got our maid, Hilda, who was referred over to us. She was amazing. It was scary. It was a little weird trying to mix in and figure out how to do this whole maid thing, and But the interesting thing was, about 2 weeks later, I heard my daughter playing with her friends, and she told her friends, "Oh, I don't have to do anything anymore. I don't clean, I don't pick up my clothes, I don't do anything." And the other kids said, "Yeah, I know, because the maids do it." And I heard that and that hurt. Not to mention, I thought, boy, when we get transferred back to stateside, I'm going to be the maid, and I'm not picking up after her, so she needs to learn how to do this. I spoke to my husband then, and I said, "What are we going to do?" He said, "Well, let's come up with a plan." So we came up with a plan, and it was up to me to take that plan and act it out. What we did then is that we went ahead and I actually met with Hilda and my daughter and myself at the kitchen table. While we were there, I explained to Hilda that my daughter doesn't have grandparents here, and they're 8,842 miles away. They weren't coming at any time to come spend time with us on this island. I said, "So would you be interested in being my daughter's grandmother?" And God knows I could use a grandmother. She was very honored. She said, "I'm very honored. I definitely would love to do that, and I'll teach you all about the Azores." And I said, "That's wonderful. I want to know. Teach me how to cook Azorean food," and so on and so on. She said, "Okay, I can do that." Well, 2 years flew by really quick. The things that I remember most than anything else was the first time I went to her home. While the kids were outside playing, I brought my neighbor with me, Sue. We went inside to have coffee, and we sat down in her kitchen. The first thing we noticed was the floor. There was no carpet on the floor. There was no linoleum on the floor. No tile, no wooden slats. It was bare floor. I'm talking dirt. However, it was packed so tight, you didn't have to worry that when you stomped on it, dirt would go flying all over the place. And it was immaculate in her house. There wasn't a whole lot of things in there, but what she did have was amazing. And her whole family were just so happy all the time, despite what they did. But what I really noticed was this counter, this long white counter in the kitchen. She had 5 different appliances on that counter. And they were all small appliances, a toaster. She had several different things on there. And I said, oh, Hilda, my goodness, Grandma, look at all these wonderful appliances you have. And she giggled and said, oh, let me show you a secret. And she held up the plug, and it looked just like this plug. Well, I'm in an island in Portugal. Trust me, they don't use our regular plugs. They do a 220 plug. And I said, is that the same with all these appliances? And she said, yes, but shh, no one knows my secret. And all the women in the town think that I'm so good that everybody gives me their items. And so she goes, but I can't use any of them. And I was like, wow. I go, but is that all right? She goes, oh yes, I'm so happy with what I have. I get to look at my beautiful items every day, and I'm always happy when I see them. And I said, wow, that's pretty interesting. So going back to it's time to leave. We get our orders. We have to take off. My daughter and I plan a goodbye party for Hilda. Because every time I spoke to her, she was always telling me how thankful she was about everything. And I started thinking about everything she had always told me over those 2 years. And so we wrapped up 5 boxes for her. And we sat down, we had coffee, and we had sweets. We invited some friends over, and we gave her the 5 boxes, and they were all wrapped up. She unwrapped each box, and each time she unwrapped it, she would hold her face, and she'd start to cry and said, oh, no, Miss Marion, no, Miss Marion. And I said, oh, but it's okay. It's okay, because you gave me so much that I can take with me for the rest of my life. I now know that it doesn't matter how much you have or what it is, just that you're happy with it, and that gives you more. And she said, yes, that's true. And I said, that's why I can give you these items. So when I take you home today, we're getting rid of all your other items, and we're putting these up. And now you can cook for your friends, and they can see the items actually working. And she said, thank you. You know, I learned, besides how thankful she was about everything and that was around, they were hard-working individuals. I learned the week before I left, I thought she was the same age as my parents. I found out she was only 7 to 10 years older than me. She never would tell me exactly. But they worked out in the field in the sun, and so they felt it. And it helped me to understand, again, what thankfulness truly was. Thank you.